out to the coast. We'll get together, have a few laughs.
Do you think I'm gonna quit? We never quit!
But the truth is, we all have to eat a little shit from time to time.
Feel that sting, big boy, huh? That's pride fucking with you, see? You gotta fight through that shit.
Sir, are you classified as human?
Negative. I am a meat popsicle.
Gonna need a light. If you touch me again, I'll kill you.
Butch. What does it mean?
I'm an American, honey. Our names don't mean shit. Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
Hey everybody, I am Paul Shirey with Repacked Wisdom. Welcome back to the show. I have another great guest this week, and I am excited to have him here. I have Mr. Sean O'Connell. Now, Sean, I have known for many, many years. I've run into him literally all over the world, much like my previous guest, Max Avery. Sean has also been on my YouTube channel, on the Arctic Ninja Network. We did a commentary on Man of Steel. So that's another place you can go right after this if you're so inclined. It was a really fun, awesome chat with two Zack Snyder files, who I think at that point that we recorded it, I can't remember if the Zack Snyder's Justice League had been announced or not, but either way, it was a celebration of Man of Steel, and it's an awesome, awesome show if you guys want to check that out. Now Sean is coming on to Repackage Wisdom because, again, just like my prior guest, Max Avery, Sean has written a book, but not just his first book. This is Sean's third book, which is on Bruce Willis, which is called Bruce Willis, Celebrating the Cinematic Legacy of an Unbreakable Hollywood Icon. Sean, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you back.
Paul, with all honesty, when I started to do a short list of like people that I wanted to talk to on this promotional tour, you were at the top.
Look at that.
Well, I deeply admire, your film knowledge. And I know you're a Bruce apologist as well.
100%.
As I am. So
100%.
I was like, if I'm going to talk Bruce with anybody, I want to make sure I get time with Paul. So I'm glad we're doing this.
That is awesome. And yes, man, there's so much to talk about with Bruce Willis. But before we talk about Bruce Willis, I want to talk about Sean O'Connell.
Okay.
I want to know, how did Sean O'Connell become a film journalist and then lead into becoming an author? How did this happen? Tell us, give us the Cliff Notes journey of Sean O'Connell.
So, as most people who write about film or spend some time in the film industry will probably cop to, we grew up as film lovers. I was as a teenager, preteen, frequented the video store in my hometown in New York. Spent time just perusing the shelves, kind of grabbing everything I can get my hands on. At one point, the lady who worked that store, it was called Apple and Eve Video in Massapequa Park, New York. I think just realized that she saw me in there every single day, and she started putting together like stacks of VHS tapes for me to bring home. And it was like a quick education on almost every genre. I was at the time obsessed with horror films, but she was giving me Westerns and musicals and just everything that she thought I should be appreciating. And I really came to love just storytelling in general. I really started to fall for finding great stories that kept you hooked, that resonated with you with a long period of time. And then film just became my sort of chosen method of taking in those stories. So all the way through high school and college, I was, the kid who went to the movies every Friday to see whatever was new.
Oh yeah.
And when I graduated high school, I started working as an admissions counselor at my school. And I was traveling around the country, recruiting high school students to come to our school. It was a great first right out of college job. You were paid to travel around the country and promote the school. And one of the counselors who I worked with, close friend of mine, we would spend all of our lunch breaks, reading the Washington Post reviews. At the time, the school was in DC, and talking movies, talking about the success of Titanic, or how much T2 improved on Terminator, and just all the types of things that that movie nerds get into. And he said to me at one point, he goes, "Man, you really should do this for a living. Like, you should talk about movies. That should be your profession." And that was my light bulb moment where I was like, "Wow, people actually do get paid to do this. This is Siskel and Ebert in their prime, in broadcasting, and I was taking some communications classes, but didn't really know what to do with it, kind of thing. And so I buckled down and tried to get some entry level jobs, just writing about film. And this was 98, 97, 98, when every website needed content, just desperately needed content.
Oh yeah, that was a boom right there.
So came in at the right time.
Yeah.
Came in at the right time when like people were looking for writers who didn't mind doing it for cheap labor. I mean, I literally did it just I wrote reviews to get a pass to a free screening, to a free advanced screening, and built my portfolio up. And I eventually got a foot in the door at USA Today there in Roslyn, Virginia. And that led to a foot in the door at the Washington Post. And then I've just been falling upwards ever since. So
nice. And you're at Cinema Blend now, correct?
Yes.
Still with Cinema Blend. You also have a podcast with Cinema Blend.
Mm-hmm.
What's the my brain's not working.
It's the Real Blend podcast.
Real Blend. I was going to say that. And you guys have had some amazing guests, like serious guests. Like that is if you guys are looking for a movie podcast that's strictly movies, Real Blend is pretty amazing in terms of guests. Like you just can't beat it. And a bunch of great guys too that are on it. So I mean,
so my co-hosts are Kevin McCarthy and Jake Hamilton.
Both great guys, amazing guys.
And they're well known for their junket skills, like their interview skills.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
We lucked into an early decision where we decided we were going to try to go after directors, in that format, because Paul, as you know, having done the junket circuit for so long, 4 minutes with a director makes no sense. Like this is someone who has lived with the project for years upon years. They want to get into a deeper discussion about it. And so let's just be honest. 4 minutes with anybody is not enough time. I call it speed dating, because that's really what it is. You have 4 minutes to make an impression. You have 4 minutes to like read the room. You have 4 minutes to try and get your questions out without knowing how they're going to respond. Right. It really is. It's a crapshoot. You really never know what you're going to get with a junket. It's crazy. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the truth is, as fun as movie stars are, and they are fun, some more fun than others, talking to a filmmaker or a writer is, if you're a film geek, is so much more rewarding in terms of conversation that you're going to get, like infinitely. Yeah, they always have the best stuff to say. Yeah. And an actor, through no fault of their own, like they might just view it as a job. It's
exactly. Yeah. Well, and they don't have, they read a script. I was given a role. I did what was asked of me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They weren't making the big creative decisions in that sense. Some are a little more involved than others, as we know, but mostly it's, it's the filmmakers that are really shaping what you saw and what you experienced, which is not to diminish what actors do, because it's amazing what they do. But at the same time, talking to a filmmaker about their movies, to me, is top. So I think that is such a badass way that you guys have gone. And you guys have gotten Nolan. You guys have gotten Tarantino.
Our most recent ones, we have George Miller for Furiosa.
Oh man, that's badass.
We had Denis.
That's awesome.
Denis came on for Dune Part 1 and Part 2.
Look at that.
We had Alex Garland for Civil War. Like we've had some really good people over the.
You can't beat it. You can't beat it. So Sean, let's talk about Bruce Willis.
Sure.
You did a book on Zack Snyder, released the Snyder Cut. We all know why you wrote that book. I don't think you need to explain it, but that is like an all-encompassing book. And then you wrote a Spider-Man book with great power about the journey of Spider-Man on the big screen. What led you to Bruce Willis for this third book?
Well, I've always been a fan of his. I've always admired his range, which I don't think gets enough attention. I think he gets pigeonholed as an action star, which is understandable, for the projects that he's chosen. But I always loved the way that he would branch out and try wacky comedies. Got onto the science fiction run that all the action stars sort of jumped on in the 90s. Was very eager to work with auteur filmmakers, usually early in their career. When you consider Quentin at Pulp Fiction was, red hot because of Reservoir Dogs, but still untested,
still new, still on the scene.
M. Night, for Sixth Sense wasn't quite M. Night yet. Getting together with Ryan Johnson for Looper, pretty early on. Ryan hadn't done Breaking Bad yet, hadn't done Star Wars, hadn't done Knives Out or Glass Onion. So Bruce had an eye for these young filmmakers, and I loved tracking his progress along those ways. So I've always been a big fan. When he announced his retirement, it immediately struck me that like I would like to do something that celebrates his filmography. I would like to explain to people why this retirement matters. In many ways, I view it as the end of this chapter of movie stars. People who used to in their prime be able to open a movie just because they were in it.
Yeah.
Some of these actors who were larger than life and were paid that way, but came with the culture of, he was tabloid fodder with him and Demi Moore forever. He could bring the party with him to a Planet Hollywood opening. But then, really wanted to drill down into his professional work and why did he choose the roles that he chose? What did he learn from them? What were some of the trends that were influencing some of his decisions? What was behind some of his biggest mistakes? Because he has plenty. I'm not trying to say that Bruce is Teflon in any way, shape, or form.
No, nobody is.
Yeah, but I wanted to focus. My thesis was he was the guy in the Planet Hollywood group of Stallone and Schwarzenegger who could do a number of roles that the other guys couldn't do. He
was good as the everyman. He was the everyman.
100%. Yes.
Arnold and Stallone take themselves out of that running just by the way they look. The musculature is just, that's not an everyman. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It could never be that way. So sorry, I interrupted. I just have to agree. That's 100%. He's in their league, but physically he's the only one out of that group that could play the everyman. If you really look at it with all the action stars in there, I was talking about Van Damme, Lundgren, all those guys. You roll up into that thing. Willis was the only one that was like, listen, I'll get in shape, but I'm not going crazy here.
Yeah.
And that, I think that afforded him a lot of opportunity to play some really unique roles that those other guys just simply could not do or couldn't be bought in.
Well, in that way, is his trajectory more Harrison Ford?
I think so. I think so, with a more of a comedic edge, because Ford doesn't really do much comedy. And I feel like each time he tries it, it really just doesn't work. I think he's too Harrison Ford to do comedy. Like he's such a unique personality, but he's just not really a comedic actor. He's got that timing, when he's Han Solo and everything, like he's great, but it's still, I wouldn't call that comedy, Well, but Willis could do comedy. He could be funny.
Well, starting with his earliest roles, like these are things that I learned kind of about him the more I sat and lived with his career. Of course, he starts with Moonlighting. That's the one that puts him on the map.
Yeah.
And that is very much modeled after this style of comedy that he really appreciated, which was the Howard Hawks, 1940s sort of screwball comedies.
Yeah.
Where a guy and a gal just, locked into this pitter patter, repartee that he and Sybil Shepherd nailed in Moonlighting. That translates over into Blind Date, which doesn't do as well as Die Hard, so Die Hard puts him on the action trajectory. But Kevin Smith said something in an interview that I found to be really fascinating, which is Willis, his natural counterpart around that time was actually Bill Murray. And if, let's say theoretically, this sounds absurd, but if Willis got Ghostbusters and Murray got Die Hard, would their careers have been totally different? Like, because Bruce can do Scrooged, Bruce can do What About Bob? Like, there's versions of those movies where Willis is in it and it works.
That's true. That's very true. Man, Willis and Ghostbusters would have been amazing. I love Bill Murray and Ghostbusters. I don't want to piss anybody off with sacrilege here, but in an alternate universe, I would love to see the Bruce Willis version of Ghostbusters. That would be amazing. Because you're right. He could do it. He could do that role. He could do, that kind of snarky, but still smart and cool kind of character. I feel like he excelled in that.
And anti-authoritarian,
Absolutely.
Flying in the face of the quote unquote establishment that Murray does in, Caddyshack, Stripes,
Yeah. Oh man, Bruce
Ghostbusters.
Willis in Stripes would have been great. I mean, there's just so many Bill Murray roles that Willis could have done.
So when Kevin Smith made that comparison, and I was like, God, he's so right.
He really
But-
is. That's a great observation.
But Willis instead has global success with Die Hard. And then whether he wanted it to be that way or not, he became on the action track,
Yeah.
and then always sort of had that as a safety net to return to, so that even when he tried the Billy Bathgates of the world, the Bonfire of the Vanities, he could fall back on Last Boy Scout, Striking Distance,
Yeah.
movies like
Jump
that
into an
he
action
know
movie.
that he could almost quote unquote do in his sleep and still make some money.
Well, and I think the other great thing about Willis is that, as you said, he takes risks. He took a lot of risks. He did. I think a lot of people may view it as like, he was just an action guy. It's like that's where his bread and butter was, as you've said. But the roles I think that he did outside of that, which didn't always work, but many did, and I always think about Pulp Fiction. I'm like, and I watch Pulp Fiction at least once a year. I just watched it about a month or two ago. And he's so good in Pulp Fiction. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just so good. His as Butch, like, he's amazing. And then you see him in something like Moonrise Kingdom,
Yeah,
where he's very like just kind of playing it down. He's very almost nebbish in a way,
Sure.
and he's just great. And that's where like he does these little things in between these big things. And I think you're right in many ways that he is overlooked in that way. We don't appreciate the subtler things he's done. And some of those subtle things became huge, like Pulp Fiction.
Sure.
But some of them didn't,
He has a confidence to be quiet.
Yes.
The stretch in Pulp Fiction when he has to go back into the apartment to retrieve the watch is I believe it's a 12-minute sequence where he has one line of dialogue, which is when he's picked up the watch, and he says like, that's how you're going to beat him.
Yep.
Butch.
Yep.
And that's it. But other than that, it's him holding and of course, the celebrated sequence of his opening bit where Marcella is just lecturing him about what he's going to do. And the camera's just
Feel that
on him.
sting, big boy.
Yeah. But the camera's on him and Bruce holds it, he knows he can sit there silently and still tell you everything he wants to tell you. And that
Truly.
comes to fruition in what is, to me still one of his most remarkable roles which is The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
If you try to tell me that the guy who made Die Hard, is also going to be in this quiet psychological thriller opposite a child actor, and be very content to play the B character to this child actor, to set him up essentially.
Yeah.
How many of our other A-listers at this time, Paul, and the egos that are fueling the industry at this point, who are content to be a role player, an ensemble guy. And Bruce did that all the time. And I don't think he gets credit for it.
Yeah. And I gotta mention some of the other ones that I love from Bruce too. I mean, there's so many. For one, I am a Hudson Hawk apologist forever. I love Hudson Hawk. I recognize and will say it's not really a good movie in a traditional sense, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And he is just having so much fun in that movie. Yep. Like he's just parading through it. And I feel like he's like just the most Bruce Willis of that era.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's just the most himself in Hudson Hawk. It should just be called Bruce Willis, the movie. It shouldn't even be called Hudson Hawk. It should be called Bruce Willis.
Well, I think that movie is the most unfiltered vision of the types of stories he wanted to tell.
100%. Absolutely.
It's got the Three Stooges slapstick comedy, the hitmen named after candy bars, it's
So
trotting. He's singing in it. It's doing everything he wants to do.
Bunny, ball. I've seen that movie so many times. Like, I mean, that was part of, my VHS days. Hudson Hawk was in regular rotation.
Sure.
It's crazy that it was. Another movie of his that I absolutely love that I just remember being so ridiculously hyped for was The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
When The Fifth Element, that was actually the first time that I ever logged onto the computer and went to a movie website, because I saw on the movie poster at the theater, The Fifth Element, and it was just the letters, right? It was a teaser poster. And then it said at the bottom is like, www.whatisthefifthelement.com. And I was like,
Okay.
I got home and I was like, I got to check it out. And it was like the worst, like slow loading kind of crappy thing. But man, I remember seeing that first trailer and my mind was blown. I was like, holy crap, I got to see this movie. And, he's definitely too old for Lilu in that movie, I guess, if we want to play that card. But it's just one of his defining roles, and I absolutely love it. And
that and 12 Monkeys are the two entries in the science fiction genre where both Terry Gilliam and Luc Besson say they couldn't have made the movies that they wanted to make if they didn't have. Besson says, like, the studio tells you need someone who can open a big weekend.
Yep.
Like, that's the reality of the business, like, if you don't have that, you don't have a movie.
Yeah.
And so for Bruce to look at the script and be like, I'm on board for this, like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm a taxi cab driver and this perfect creation is going to fall in my back seat and I get whisked away I'm in, let's do it kind of thing. And, and he gets those movies greenlit, he runs to a certain extent studio interference,
Sure.
so that the directors who he believes in can complete their vision. Now, it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's De Palma and it's Bonfire of the Vanities and there's just too much going on, but more often than not, he had success by finding out these directors with strong voices. Wes Anderson, like you already brought up, Zemeckis for Death Becomes Her.
Yeah.
He went out of his way to find filmmakers who had a voice and worked with them more often than not.
And even with filmmakers, he was great at, finding filmmakers that just kind of capitalized on the genre that he, excelled in, Michael Bay with Armageddon,
Yep.
And then, another one that I absolutely love is Last Man Standing with Walter Hill.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that is Walter Hill's last great film. He's done films since, but that is Walter Hill's last great, like, cinematic film. I saw that in the movies like 3 times, and I don't think it was a big hit. I think it did fine. But man, it's got some of the best shootouts, and just Willis he's just perfectly grizzled in that movie. And it's like, it really is just him just going out and it's, part Western, part action movie. Anybody that's seen it, it's amazing. And I feel like those movies, really, it shows that he loves working with, these auteur guys, but also these, bombastic guys, these, staples of the genre, kings of the genre at this point. So, and I think that has led to Willis being such a massive success, is that whether he was saying yes to these guys or he was seeking them out personally, or his agents were helping him or getting advice from other people, doesn't matter. He still worked with them. Not many people have all those names in their resume,
One of my favorites is Richard Donner as well, too. He got to work with him on 16 Blocks.
16 Blocks. Like, I mean, he's stacking them up. It's like, so for contrast, I would say, look at Bruce Willis versus somebody like Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Now, I think Dwayne Johnson is great. He's fun. He's cool. He's all those things. He's The Rock, right? But he does not chase filmmakers.
Right.
He chases people that I think are malleable, that he can kind of shape and do what he basically wants them to do.
Yeah.
We saw that the image of him in the Safdie brothers movie that's coming up, which that has potential to be an amazing Dwayne Johnson movie.
Sure.
Because
I hope
he's working with, kind of auteurish filmmakers. He's stepping out of that, the usual thing.
Yep.
But he's not somebody that's pursued that. He hasn't pursued that aspect of the creative endeavor. It's been more about what is my role in this? What is my, what am I bringing to this and how am I setting this all up? As opposed to saying, who can I collaborate with to make the best film? And I feel like Willis really capitalized on that.
Well, let's talk about his blue collarness also too. Like, Dwayne Johnson, through no fault of his own, doesn't have the relatability of Bruce Willis.
No.
Bruce Willis felt like a guy that you could walk into a bar and you might see him sitting at a stool. You know, Rock
Already
is
drunk.
gonna be, yeah, right. Rock is going to be in his gym, you know, drinking whatever energy drink he's got his name on, and that's just not who Willis is. And I don't know who that person is now. You know, I'm really not sure. And maybe that's the byproduct of the superhero genre being as popular as it has been for X amount of years. You know, where the definition of a hero isn't someone who does the right thing no matter how difficult the odds, because it's the right thing to do, right? Willis was the champion of that genre for years upon years.
Yeah.
You know, it was going to be difficult. He was going to get broken along the way, but he was going to do the right thing because it was important. You watched him thinking that if I were in that situation, maybe I would probably try to do this as well too. I would rise to the challenge and overcome it. You know, and now we live in an age where Statham and The Rock are, even as guys, you know, are Terminators. They're unstoppable. They can,
they're cartoons. They're cartoons.
Punch. And that wouldn't have worked in the 80s and 90s, which is, you know, I'm not going to be overly sentimental, but I appreciate that type of storytelling.
Yeah. I think the first time I've seen Statham bleed was in Beekeeper, which I thought was actually pretty good and pretty in line with kind of that genre of films. Like, I think if like The Beekeeper probably would have starred Bruce Willis if they were in that same age. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of how that movie struck me. But you know, these guys, they're like, hey, I can only take a certain amount of punches per movie. I can't bleed, you know, it's all this stuff. But like, to me, what I loved about Willis and what cemented him as someone for me to continue to follow and to be a fan of was that blue collar, you know, man can bleed, man can cry, but also man will fight aspect, which was so brilliantly captured in Die Hard, which is my all-time favorite movie. And seeing Willis bleed, and I mean bleed in Die Hard. This isn't like, oh, he's got like a little blood dripping down the side. It's like blood pouring out of his mouth, blood, like literally at the end of the movie, he's caked in blood. It's like literally just, it's like he just ran through a blood slick, and it's not even a horror movie. So, you know, to me, I'm like, that's what I want to see. And I think that's something that Hollywood has lost the pulse of, because all the heroes now, you know, they're kind of PG-13ized in that, like, well, we can only have X amount of blood or X amount of injuries. And we don't want to see them weak. And again, you go back to the Johnson Statham kind of model where they're like, I can only be hit so many times and I can never be defeated or shot or limping away at the end. You know, I always have to be standing tall and giving off a cool quip and then credits roll. Willis didn't do that. Willis was like, shall be bloody and messed up. I don't give a shit. Like, you know, I don't know if he had anything like that in his contract. Maybe you would know better than me, but I just feel like that is a huge part of his appeal, was that we could see him get hurt. We could see him wounded. You know, that's what I want to see. Because all of us as humans, we all get wounded, whether physically, mentally, whatever. We all can recognize those insurmountable odds that we have to overcome. Right. And that's what we want to see. That's where people, I think, forget, like, movies are a reflection of our humanity. And I think that's what Bruce Willis really tapped into.
Well, and that's what kills me about the fifth Die Hard, where, you know, it loses the plot so much with that, in that he's indestructible, you know, in that film. And he's bitter, you know, and angry and hates his son. And it's all the things that are like anti-John McClane.
Yeah, right. And he lost like the apologetic, you know, nature that he had in the first Die Hard, or even the second Die Hard for that matter. And in the third one, he's like beaten down. The fourth one, I can't. I always remember the fourth one as being fine, but the fifth one was pretty abysmal. I remember going in just like hoping. I was like, please let them pull this off. And I remember we got to the end, and I was like right before the final shootout stuff, and I was like, this is it. You know as well as I do. You get to a point in a movie where you're like, that's it. They can't salvage this. Yeah. It's done. It's cooked, you know, it's like, and that's always such a disappointing moment, you know, when like, I hate because there are movies that pull it out in the third act and you're like, holy crap. Like one recently was Saltburn for me. Like at first I was kind of like, I was intrigued, but it was like silly and dumb. Then I got to the end, and I was like, holy shit, that was awesome. I know that not everybody felt that way, but for me, by the third act, I was like, I really didn't see that coming in that way.
Yeah.
It was still depraved and messed up, but you know as well as I do, there's plenty of movies where you're like, this ain't going to happen. Yeah. It's too late.
And again, Bruce has his fair share of those, particularly in the later half. And so I do a capsule review of every movie he's ever been in, all 115 movies, which means that for the purpose of this book, I watched all of the direct-to-video ones that he made from 2019 on.
Man.
Sure, the diagnosis, of his aphasia helps to clarify, what happened there.
Yeah.
It still leaves a lot of unanswered questions. Like, why didn't someone on his team step in? How come they still allowed this to happen? You can see the degradation of his performance, at a very specific moment. And we've all heard the stories now at this point about him being fed, lines in an earpiece because he couldn't retain his dialogue. And Paul, as anyone who's watched any level of movies, you can tell, they clearly shot Bruce, all 5 of his scenes in a day. The actors are working around him, with a very blatant body double. And it's like, this is really sad. Why is this happening? Kind of thing.
It really is sad. It is. It's terrible. And I remember I read the expose piece on Bruce in his kind of his final years working. And man, it's just really some leeching enablers were attached to him.
Yeah.
And it really is too bad that they had to let him go out that way. That it was very unfortunate. And personally, I have no desire to watch those movies. I know you did it for the book, and hey, good for you, for being, you're being thorough. For me, it's like, I know what those will be. And what you just said, it's like, you can tell, like, Bruce was there for 2 days.
Yep.
And the truth is, like, I don't want to see Bruce in that state. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, I always want to remember Bruce for his best work, and he's got a shit ton of it, which easily cancels out his worst stuff. It really does. Like, even his worst stuff still has a little bit of appeal. Maybe not North, but there's still, some pretty. There's still some stuff to be gleaned from that. And it's too bad that, he had to retire, but at the same time, he's an old man at this point, and it's hard to grapple with that sometimes when you're like, you see this with a lot of our stars, and we see a lot of guys, that are retiring and stepping away and passing away. And, if anything, it's just showing that we're getting old, but,
listen, Father Time wins that battle, every time out.
No one here gets out alive. That's the way it is. So,
and Clint, so Clint becomes the rarity. Clint's going to work until the very end, it seems.
Clint better die before me. If I die before Clint Eastwood, I'm going to feel terrible. I'm just kidding. I mean, Clint will probably, and there's a good chance. I mean, that guy is like made of something, he's an immortal. I don't know what the deal is, but hey, I mean, look at that. Guy's in his 90s still directing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And Clint Eastwood, one of the original names for Die Hard, amongst a sea of others. I think that is another huge telling part about Die Hard, is like how it was like literally every star in Hollywood was, every male A-list lead was up for that role in Die Hard, and every single one of them turned it down.
Yep.
And now Die Hard is my all-time favorite movie. So I don't know, somebody.
Well, it's a perfect
Bruce Willis's win.
It's a perfect film. There isn't an ounce of fat. Every scene is calculated to deliver, and it's fantastic from start to finish.
I can't watch it without studying it. I'm a huge McTiernan fan. And when I watch it, I'm just, and people probably hate watching Die Hard with me, because I'm like, you see the Canton angle? Look at that. Now watch the shot. Like, and then there's like, can we shut the hell up so I can just watch Die Hard? But that's how I am, because I'm like, this thing is a masterpiece, and I'm trying to explain why. Because these days I've had people say, no, there's better action movies since. I'm like, no, there's not. No, I'm sorry, there's not.
Really
Die Hard is the best action movie ever made, and I have not seen anything that's topped it yet. There's movies that have come close, but it hasn't happened. Not for me.
I recall the first time I got to stand in front of that building in Los Angeles.
The
Fox Plaza. And looking
Crazy.
down that street, I could see the helicopters coming toward the building. Like that movie is so ingrained in my brain that once I saw the angle of where I was standing, I was like, oh, here come the choppers. Here comes Agents Johnson and Johnson as their
oh, just like fucking Saigon, eh, Slick? I swear it's terrible. I watch Die Hard. I hear the dialogue before it even comes every time I watch it. It's insane. I saw Die Hard is the only movie I've seen, is the movie I've seen the most in theaters. I saw it 14 times when it came out. But as a kid, I didn't have anything else to do. There's definitely no movie I'm going to see 14 times anymore. That's not gonna happen. I think 4 is the max. I think I saw Endgame 4 times. But there's nothing else I would go 14 times that I could think of ever again. So Sean, talk to us real quick here about the kind of wisdom that you've carried with you to get to where you are as an author, as a successful author, a successful entertainment journalist. You're in a band. I don't know if people know this. You're in a band. I've seen your posts on Facebook.
Yeah.
Are you guitar, bass? What do you play?
I'm playing bass guitar in this band, but I can play drums. I can play guitar. I've played music my entire life. It's always just kind of like whatever band I'm playing in, it's whatever they need. And this band in particular needed a bass guitarist. And I also enjoy playing drums. It's a really expensive habit. I enjoy playing guitar, but everyone can play guitar. So it seems like bands always need a bassist, and a bass to me fits right in that pocket between drums and guitar.
Okay. All right.
So it's really, we play pop punk music from like the 90s and 2000s.
Nice.
And it's just fun. It's just a blast. And so that leads a little bit to my shared wisdom I want to give to everybody, which is be prepared to say yes to everything. You never know what's coming around the corner. And I've said this recently a couple of times in different circumstances, but so I guess I'm really reflecting on it a lot, but it's so true. Every job that I've ever had, Paul, I never knew it existed until it was offered to me. I worked for a newspaper for 7 years. That newspaper wasn't even in business until it started, and I brought my clips by there. And then they hired me on the spot, and I worked for them for 7 years.
Wow.
I didn't know what Cinema Blend was. I've been with them for 11 years. If you had told me I was going to do a podcast one day, I wouldn't have believed you. And now we've been doing Real Blend for 6 years, and it's allowed us the opportunity to talk to X amount of people. I was told a number of times by multiple people like, oh, well, you're a writer. You'll probably just write a book one day. And I was always like, I have zero interest in writing a book. I can never think, I don't even know if I'd have a topic that would be interesting enough to have a book, and now I'm 3 books into the process. So I would say to everybody listening, always be prepared to say yes to opportunities as they present themselves to you. It's going to take you some exciting places. You're going to challenge yourself and push yourself. But at the end of the day, you're going to have these results that hopefully, stand the test of time, because saying no closes every door,
Yeah.
And so I'm way more of a yes person, probably to a detriment. A lot of times I'll say yes to stuff and my wife makes eye contact with me and she's like, you don't want to do that. Don't do that. And after this Bruce Willis book, I actually said to her, because I did the 3 books relatively back to back. And I said, if I come to you and I tell you that I have an idea, kick me in the groin. Because I need a break. I need to stop. And so I have. I've enjoyed not having a project, but now I'm getting a little bit of an itch, and I'm starting to explore a couple ideas. So we'll see.
Nice. Now let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you say, because I think that's great, saying yes to opportunities. I think what I would say is the people that are saying no to opportunities, would you say that that's more out of fear than anything? I feel like that's kind of a, because what holds you back from saying yes a lot of times is fear, right? Like, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't, I'm not sure, whatever. And I think, kind of in a repackaged wisdom way, it's kind of like, sometimes you just have to jump. And I feel like that kind of goes back to that.
I completely understand that people are wired differently, but I think when people say, I can't do that, I just don't believe that, like you can do almost anything, outside of like, okay, you can't fly, but like,
right.
within the realm of your possibility, if you're being asked to do something, public speaking, sitting down and concentrating to get something written that you want to get written, launch a podcast. Like these are all relative things that, and it helps me when I look around and I think like, oh, someone else did it, so if someone else has done something, then I can figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And so you say yes, and you kind of learn in the process, and nobody is perfect at everything, at anything. So everyone's learning, along the way.
Yeah.
So you say yes to it and you take it on, and then you learn it as you go. And no one's expecting perfection right out of the box. People are expecting you to gradually improve.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. You're not going to be great at whatever it is right off the bat, but you're going to improve, and you're going to get better, and you're going to see what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And then suddenly you have a new interest. So, I'm a glass half full guy by nature. So when someone says like, hey, this sounds interesting, would you want to do this? I'm generally going to be like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go check it out, sort of thing. But I understand that people are wired differently, but I encourage them to push themselves a little bit harder and just say yes to things.
I feel like that is like the perfect connection to you and Bruce Willis, because I think he said yes to everything, much to his detriment sometimes. But no, I think that, that's actually, it's a nice tie directly, to the book really, is that, I feel like Bruce Willis, I feel like he kind of lived that life too. He said yes to everything, and some things worked and some things didn't, but they worked more than they didn't. That's pretty amazing.
Who's talking?
I'm doing a podcast episode and we're talking about the reason this exists. The reason you and I are talking is because of Bruce Willis. So he definitely made some decisions that led him down the right path. So that's pretty great.
100%. And never, and didn't let the failures stop him at all. I think I mentioned this at one point in the book, like he's not Teflon, the critics did take their swings at him, but it never prevented him from working. There was never a period where Bruce Willis was down and out, and unemployable. And almost every star goes through that period of like, what are they going to do next? Where
absolutely.
Where are they right now? What's their stage at? And Bruce had 4 decades, of
continuous work. Yeah. 100%. Sean, where can people find you? And where can they find your book? Give us the deets. Tell us where is Sean O'Connell on the interwebs?
So I'm the managing editor of a website called Cinema Blend. You can go there on a daily basis. I do a lot of interviews for them through the press junkets and stuff. Reel Blend, REEL, like a film reel. Reel Blend is our weekly podcast that drops on Friday mornings, all the different places you get your podcast needs met. We have a YouTube channel as well, too, if you want to go subscribe over there and watch our interviews with different people. The book is up for pre-order. It's called Bruce Willis, Celebrating the Cinematic Legacy of an Unbreakable Hollywood Icon. Well, we didn't talk about Unbreakable.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe we didn't talk about Unbreakable. Another amazing movie. That's the thing. It's such a huge resume. There's like, you'd be, oh shit. Yeah, he did that too. That was awesome.
So it's available now. It's available for pre-order now. It's going to be on shelves on June 11th. I've been telling people as I'm speaking to them, it's an ideal Father's Day gift for the dad in your life who loves movies, maybe loves Bruce. So pick it up for him. Father's Day is June 16th. The book drops June 11th. You should have plenty of time to grab it. And
perfect. And Amazon does same day delivery, people, for a lot of places.
There you go.
Even if you forget, you get the last minute, you can still get it. Perfect.
But basically, it's an excuse for me to come on and talk to my friends like Paul.
It's always a great excuse, no matter what gets you onto the show. Sean, it's great having you. And dude, I just think it's awesome seeing you succeed and do this, become an author. I've seen, a lot of guys in our trade. So I had Max Avery on and he's following that same kind of path. And I think it's amazing. I love seeing these people like yourself that I've become friends with over the years, just traveling all over the world. I just seeing everybody continue to blossom. It's pretty awesome. So
Max's Dune book is insane too. It's good.
Holy crap. That thing is immersive as hell.
I know. I didn't realize that there was that much material about Dune.
Dude, I swear he kicked over every rock in the desert. So awesome.
Yeah. I got my own physical copy of my book and I was like, this doesn't look anything like his. His is so badass. I love him. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's awesome. Sean, you are awesome as well. Thank you so much for coming on. And again, we now know where to find Sean's book. Can't recommend it enough. Sean is a great guy. Check him out over at Cinema Blend and Real Blend. And you, of course, can catch us right here on Repackaged Wisdom podcast, as well as on the YouTube channel, Arctic Ninja Network. So thanks again for joining us. Hopefully you got some wisdom. I think Sean's wisdom that he shared with us today is amazing. I think that's great advice. Saying yes to the opportunities that come your way and bypassing that fear that would lead to a no, just say yes. I think that's great repackaged wisdom. So thank you for sharing that, Sean. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.